Supply Chain Talk, the live webinar with no presentations, no PowerPoint, just talk.
Supply Chain Talk. My name's Alistair Chariton, your host. And our main topic today is strategies to safeguard your global supply chain against future disruptions. First, as usual, we'll look at a topical news item and then we'll get into the main topic of discussion. And before I introduce my guests, a reminder that there is the chat panel on the right of your screens. So please do add your comments and questions there, and we'll try and pick up as many of those as we can. But the audience always appreciate the comments and questions, even if we can't directly address them. And there'll be the Supply Chain Talk mug awarded to the contributions that we find most useful today. So first of all, let me just mention that one of our guests, unfortunately, Nanda Kishore, suddenly had to jump on a plane right now at this time, so he couldn't unfortunately attend, but I'm sure we'll have him back on future panels, as he's been a regular guest of the show. So let me introduce my remaining three guests, and the first of those is Vikas Ray, who is the Vice President of Supply Chain at APZ McCormick & Company. And Vikas has 25 years of experience in both B2B and B2C in the FMCG sector, where he has designed, built and commissioned greenfield and brownfield plants and developed route to market solutions in Asian markets. He's used lean practices and digitalization to achieve agile, sustainable and efficient operations. And in terms of supply chain disruption, he successfully managed the pandemic with minimal supply chain disruption. So I'm sure we'll be hearing some of that experience in a moment. Welcome, Vikas. My second guest is Oza Ergul, who is Group Head of Procurement at CPO Aquila Capital. Oza has 28 years of experience in procurement and supply chain, starting in automotive at Toyota, and for the last 20 years in energy businesses, Alstom, LM Wind Power, ABB, and currently at Aquila Capital, where he leads the group's procurement function and supply chain sustainability workstream. And he's also the chair of Solar Power Europe. And he's worked globally in Asia, the US and Europe, and is currently based in Amsterdam. And it's worth mentioning that Aquila Capital invests in, initiates, develops and manages essential energy assets in wind, solar and hydro. And our final guest is Professor Dr. Mamoon Habib, who is professor at the Independent University of Bangladesh and also at the University of Texas. He's professor at the School of Business and Entrepreneurship in Bangladesh, and he's the visiting scientist at University of Texas, and also adjunct professor for the Graduate School of Business at University Tun Abdul Razak in Malaysia. And in addition to his long academic career, he's involved with supply chain industry research projects. So welcome to all three of you. And our news item this week is entitled "The UK Should Brace for Sustained Supply Chain Disorder." It comes from the food manufacturer website, written by Gwen Riddler. And it's a month or two old, but essentially it talks about the results from, I think it's an annual survey that Cooper Software do, looking at the what supply chain leaders think about the situation. And 91% of supply chain leaders saw the situation getting worse or not improving in terms of supply chain disruption. And there was comment about, I guess, familiar issues, climate change, geopolitical tensions, and in particular how that might impact food supply chains, which certainly we are seeing in the UK and elsewhere as well. And it talked about other sectors where there could be problems in fuel, food, computer chips being the most sectors affected. And it talked about some of the supply chain issues and challenges. So I guess it's sort of, perhaps the familiar gloomy outlook from the survey. And so perhaps my first question for you, Vikas, is, do you agree? Do you think that it really is getting worse and worse, or do you think challenges are stabilizing and should reduce in the coming, in the remainder of this year, for example?
Thanks, Alistair, for the question. And first of all, thank you for the introduction. And it's great to be on this panel with distinguished other guests. Obviously, if anybody said that we don't have to, you'd be in a fool's paradise. we are in a situation where there is a polycrisis that's happening. As you mentioned, it's not just one thing. There's multiple things happening at the same time, right? You have the climate change crisis, where, especially since you talked about the food industry, you have crop failures, erratic, crop results coming through. Sometimes there's a high yield and the prices go down, and there's low yield and crop failures, because of which price goes up. There's economic issues that are going on. If you read the World Economic Forum, they talk about the economic, environmental, societal, geopolitical, and technological issues that are facing every industry. And I think supply chains sort of are prepared to take on changes, but what is happening now is inconsistency. The article was published in March, and it was talking about increased freight prices and increased commodity prices. And today we are at a stage when, freight prices are coming down and commodity prices have dropped as well. Yeah. So as organizations, if you don't have your demand forecast right, if you don't have an agile planning system, you end up holding inventories at higher costs. How do you manage that? Because the general expectation is prices to drop. And OPEC or Saudi Arabia has announced that they'll be reducing oil production, so oil prices might start going up again. So you're sort of coming to office every day and saying, "Oh, what are we going to do today?" How this affects is your strategies and how you're planning for the longer term, because you're out there firefighting on a daily basis if you don't plan on this early enough. So supply chains need to prepare themselves for these adversities. They need to create a team which is on the business and in the business. The ones that are in the business are looking at the execution, regular firefighting, and on the business is looking at how do we plan, how do we strategize, how do we work on these things.
Okay, no, thank you. Oza, kind of, what are your thoughts then? So some things, from what Vikas is saying, some things getting a little bit better, some prices dropping and so on, but clearly other things could be getting worse again, with oil production perhaps reducing. So are you optimistic or pessimistic, like the survey in the article?
Yeah, I'm more realistic. Thank you for having me, Alistair. I agree with Vikas, right? I mean, things will not be getting back to stabilize in a short time, just because supply chains are becoming very non-linear and complex, right? Any disruption will create a kind of disturbance from equilibrium, right? I mean, because as they are complex systems, right? I mean, any disturbance, any start, create a kind of shock end-to-end, right? The main difficulty we have, right, especially in the last 20 years, we moved many production base to very far east, right? And so we create our own singularity, right? I mean, 50%, maybe 60% of many things coming from this location. And you are trying to bring it to 20,000 kilometers, and it takes 28 days, right? Any small disruption, if you look at what happened during the COVID, main trigger was the container availability, because they were moving to one direction, not going to other direction. Similar things will continue, right? I'm not talking about containers, but now we see that slow down in the aluminum, steel. So there's no water in the hose, right? I mean, so when the demand picks up, we will have similar kind of shock, and this will push the price up, right? I mean, we also create our own the complexities, right? I mean, we think that there will be shortage, let's say kind of sandbagging, and we are creating an artificial demand. And what I'm trying to say, right? I mean, we will have fluctuations, but going forward, those fluctuations will be in higher amplitude. Deeper rallies and the steeper rallies going forward. And what we can do, as Vikas indicated, right? And in a complex environment, right? One thing you should not do is panic, right? I mean, you should understand what is the dependencies, right? It is not one component. It can be a small component, because when I was working for automotive, we stopped manufacturing plant of Toyota, right? And just for a rivet, right? And rivet costs like maybe 1 cent, right? And but you are stopping. So you need to understand and before acting, right? And when you understand and you should make informed decisions, this is very wide spectrum, right? Forecasting and collaboration is the key, just to put yourself in a kind of customer of choice with the supplier, right? Because suppliers will be making a triage when something goes wrong, right? I mean,
Yeah.
don't be the one in the end of the line, right?
Yeah,
This
yeah.
requires
No, and that's a very good point. And the article actually did talk about the importance of maintaining good relationships with suppliers. And if, for example, you start, trying to mess around with payment terms or delay payments, when there is a crisis, you're going to be at the back of the queue because they aren't going to owe you any favors. So, very valid point. Professor Mamoon, what are your thoughts? Is it getting better or is it getting worse? Oh, I'm not sure we can hear you, Professor. I tell you what, we still can't hear you. I can see your microphone icon is switched on, so it does look as though your microphone's on, but it wasn't coming through. Okay, we'll just see if he comes back. Okay, can we hear you now?
Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear
excellent. Now you're back. That's fine.
Yeah.
Good.
What I said that, we are a little bit confused about the future destination. And because if you see very carefully that we got this kind of disruption, supply chain disruption due to the pandemic time, COVID-19 time. And secondly, we face again the disruption due to the Russia-Ukraine war. So the situation, global situation will change due to the geopolitical situation. And if you look very carefully, what we are thinking now, the dollar. If you think that in currency, we are dollar rate is very increasing high. So when we are doing the exchange, like the export, there is a relation with in terms of the currency dollar. So if you look very carefully, the Asian country, I think because he knows better than me, the Thailand, Malaysia, and the India region. So we have to communicate when based on the dollar. So in terms of the cost is very high. So when the cost is very high, then a commodity price and whole supply chain cost will be very high. So if this kind of Russia-Ukraine war is continuing, and there is a lots of issues because that when the dollar price is increasing, there is another relation with the fuel. So the Middle East countries, particularly the Saudi Arabia and other country, so their price is also very high. And that our lots of things are dependent on this kind of fuel. So then when you like to pay them more due to the dollar exchange rate is very high. And finally, our supply chain cost very high. And so what I said earlier, we are a little bit uncertain situation. What will happen after 3 to 6 months? And if you look very carefully, there are already few banks in USA already they stopped their business. And if you go back to our South Asian country, like Sri Lanka condition, Pakistan condition, so it means that global situation going to be worst. What is my perception? Maybe I could be wrong. Maybe the reality will be the better, and we are looking forward to get the better something. The same thing for UK, and UK also the part of this one. So it's my opinion is that hopefully the next few months situation will not be improved. Maybe the stable or maybe the deteriorated, but there is no question that it will be improved within the next few months.
That's a nice optimistic view, and an interesting point, as you say, with currencies. I mean, I think in Western markets, one can forget that the fluctuations in currency can be very dramatic. I mean, even between pound, euro, dollar, there can be fluctuations. But when you get to more volatile currencies, that can certainly be a very major issue. Let's move to the main topic. There's an interesting question from Jose Cordoba, but I'll come back to that one because I think it will be one we can bring in later on. So we'll keep that question there, Jose. Thank you for that one. And let's move to the main topic. So as a reminder, our main topic is strategies to safeguard your global supply chain against future disruptions. And we've talked a little bit already about some of these, but it'd be interesting to dwell, first of all, as our first bullet point, which is on the pandemic legacy. So identifying which changes to retain and which strategic challenges remain. So I think it'd be really interesting, if you're able to, is to give an example of of or two of things that you did during the pandemic. And Vikas, I think you mentioned in your introduction, or I mentioned in your introduction, how you've been very successful in avoiding disruption during the pandemic. So it'd be great to hear, are those things that you'll continue to do, or were they rather high cost things that you are not doing anymore? So it'd be very interesting to get your perspective on what worked in managing that disruption as pointers of things to continue doing.
Yeah, I think one of the most important thing that we did was empower people. Because there was a lot of difficulty for people to travel to work, which meant that there were fewer people in the offices or the factories who had to do things on their own. So I think we developed a lot more leaders, which is one of the things, and a lot of leaders need to follow that. I think travel restrictions helped as well. A lot of less people are traveling around. One of the things that I would continue is not on the higher stocks, but having stocks closer to your markets. We ourselves have put in warehouses closer to our markets so that we can supply to those markets, and that's because of multiple things. One was the pandemic itself. Second, there was the Suez Canal crisis. There's freight crisis. Cost of freight increased as well. All these coming in together. So I think one of the ways to protect oneself is to ensure that you have your stocks closer to the market.
Yeah.
The other thing that has become something that is easier for us to talk to the people on the board is automation. And automation in the past used to be more of a strategic call, cost improvement. Now it's become more of future-proofing ourselves. It's going to be harder to get people, harder to retain people who are doing repetitive manual and mental work. And this is also helping in making more improved decisions on the floor. And then, the challenges that have come through is we are focusing too much on these on the crisis that we have in hand, that a few of our long-term plans are taking a backseat. And it's not only for the organizations that I've worked with, but it's also generally what we see on sustainability, especially on reducing carbon footprint. It's more, a lot of companies are now looking at either window dressing or doing the check boxes rather than doing the big changes that one needs to do at this point of time. And that's why it's very important to get our focus back onto this. So there's good things that we have to do that's come through because of the pandemic, and there are a few things that we've left behind because of the pandemic that we have to now get on and accelerate it as well.
No, there's some great examples there. Thank you. Oza, what are your thoughts on what worked well for you in the pandemic and things that you're going to be retaining in particular?
If you look at our business, right, we are developing renewable assets, power plants. These are only possible with the labor and the assembler, installers going in the field. This was the main the difficulty we had during the COVID, because you have to contain those people, or you have to have a kind of clear health and safety checks, and also distancing rules, right? I mean, they cannot come closer anymore, etc. And but if you even take out the geopolitics from the supply chain equation, right, and having this concentration in our business to 80%, 90%, only one country supplying the things, it is not sustainable. It's not healthy, right? And so I think COVID was a kind of wake-up call, right? I mean, the buyers should diversify their supply chain, right? This requires maybe nearshoring or friendshoring, and I think this will be the next move, right? I mean, we already see with the recovery in Europe, etc. There are people seriously thinking bringing supply chains nearby, And this will not only impact on the environmental due to the carbon footprint of the transportation, but also supporting the local communities, right? And but not that easy, because this pendulum swing did swing like 15 years ago. It takes 10 years to ramp up. You cannot do the same thing in a short time. So in the meantime, you need to collaborate, right? And this is what we learned from the COVID, right? I mean, first of all, you should have a kind of clear transparency in your supply chain, a kind of sourcing map, not directly tier one or tier two. You should go up to raw material or mining, right? I mean, you should understand what can stop you, right? And what are the business practices. And in our business, it's not a secret that we have serious allegations about the labor rights, etc., human rights. So this requires lots of collaboration, right? I mean, this arm length relationship will not work anymore, right? In this requires, again, to this earlier point, requires lots of collaboration, and the collaboration only possible with the trust, and the trust is possible with the transparency. And I think digitalization and the remote working and learn a lot. How do we use the digital technologies to cooperate?
Okay, no, thank you. Well, so already some common themes there about nearshoring in particular, and then collaborating with suppliers is definitely really important. Professor Habib, what are your thoughts on what worked really well in during COVID in terms of managing the disruption?
Thank you. Basically, what we have learned from the COVID, we learned first of all that hybrid working stage. So now still we like to use that concept, that hybrid mode of working style. So that there is a few people with the site and the few people with at home. So this is a very common strategy nowadays. Most of the multinational company, they like to follow, particularly the supply chain companies, they're maintaining this one. There is a one legacy you can apply now. And then another one thing, what by two my colleagues, they already mentioned, that is diversify supplier. So earlier it was that like a monopoly supplier. Suppose that raw materials is coming from the China. So when China was locked down, then the other country, they're suffering this kind of raw crisis of the raw materials. And then it is our own kind of learning from there that why not you have to go to the diversify supplier. So first tier supplier, the first priority maybe international level. Second tier, maybe the local raw materials, so it will be the second choice, the second priority. So if you couldn't get the first level of supplier. So that is the one thing. And another one thing that what you have understood one thing. So let's start in the micro supply chain rather than macro supply chain. So that maybe the supply chain will be the area based or location based, maybe the one area instead of the whole country or the multinational countries. Because it happens that during the pandemic time that we produce the product, but unfortunately we could not export the product to the international level due to the lockdown. So now we have to make the plans, and why not we can go to this kind of thing, that micro supply chain, and that being based on the one area based. So we have to purchase raw material from that area. We have to produce the product for that area. So that is one kind of learning from the COVID period. But if you ask me now, what is the challenges now we are facing for this kind of things? The first of all, we are facing the one thing is that reduce the human resource. Reduce the human resource in the different organization due to the when you start the work on the home, and it happens in the many multinational companies that they reduce the human resource. So now when they're planning for the physical interaction again, so there is a very huge financial issues again, and due to the disruption, we are also facing the financial issues. So this is a crisis in the human capital. Particularly that different countries, the developing countries, they're facing these issues after the COVID period. So that is one of the challenges now we are facing after the COVID. There are lots of people they lost their job, or maybe they couldn't get the higher salary. That time they reduced the salary, but now they don't want to provide the same salary what we got the earlier time. So this is the one kind of challenge, that how we can manage this kind of human capital after the pandemic time.
Okay, and that relates a little bit, I think, Vikas, to what you were saying about automation not just being a cost issue. It also just it reduces that dependency on human workers, which obviously has its consequences. Those are great to hear. Lots of different views, but quite a lot of common suggestions on what worked really well. Which leads nicely to our second agenda point, which is where can digital transformation of your supply chain predict and respond to potential disruptions. And I mentioned Jose Cordoba had an interesting question, which perhaps we can just look at that as well, which asked, Kenny asked about agile planning systems. What are the best practices for assessing and implementing agile approaches? And it sounds like digital transformation to predict and respond is very much tied into that. If I can ask Vikas, first of all, what are your thoughts on digital transformation? What data do you use? What information? How do you use systems or processes to be agile and identify and react to disruptions?
Yeah, good question. I think the information that we use, especially Professor just talked about diversifying your suppliers, and for us, our raw material supply is very crucial, and it we used a lot of data on climate changes, on crop cycles, etc., to be able to predict what our supply side would be. And to your question and Jose's question as well, in terms of being able to plan our forecast more accurately, to get enough data to forecast accurately how things would go. I don't say that we did a great job at it, but I think we were able to learn a lot from where we went wrong, especially on our inventory side, where we did end up with higher inventories because we were probably not able to feed in the right kind of data into our forecasting. And I think generally the data is more on the crops and the commodity futures, impact on the freight costs due to one of the things that one has to be aware of is as we go into the future, carriers are forced to upgrade their vessels as well. How is that going to impact us in terms of our cost for our freight as they get into upgraded engines and cleaner fuels, and also in our manufacturing itself, we've done a lot of automation to be able to get our data digital. We actually use digital twins to help us with our plant performance as well in terms of equipment, the status of the equipment, and for predictive maintenance, and that's helped us as well. And this is making our plants more reliable. It's not only plant automation; it's also data acquisition. It's also office automation that goes hand in hand, and that's what helped us get better results.
Okay, that sounds really great examples because digital transformation, we were talking, weren't we, yesterday, all of us, that it can be an overused term, but it sounds like you really have embraced many of the different aspects of digital transformation. Oza,
I think to that point, what's very important is for each of the organization to really see the value in what digital changes that you bring in to your organization and where you bring in, and choose only those and get those instead of starting a huge transformation program. And I would prefer to call it digital evolution because this is changing.
Yeah,
it's changing rapidly. It's getting cheaper rapidly as well. So you have to be agile in implementing those as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Oza, what sort of things have you tried on the digital transformation journey, and indeed have you got some comments on agile, how one can be develop and sort of plan that agile supply chain?
Yeah, good question. And as the things are fluctuating deeper, right? And what we should do, what we did, in fact, increase the forecasting frequency, right? I mean, it's not a kind of monthly forecasting, but you should go shorter term so that any changes you can see in your demand and communicate with your supplier. I mean, it's very high touch, right? With selected number of suppliers, so that they can understand. Okay, they appreciate that you are aware of the changes and you are communicating those changes to them, and that you allow them to make their own planning via upstream, right? And this will happen. And the also requires a kind of hyper awareness, right? What's going on the market? I mean, it's the right time to lock the copper, or you should wait. And the it's a constant scanning to market, right? I mean, it's a kind of market intelligence gathering in terms of cost, technology, and the capacity trends, right? I mean, we have a kind of the COVID breakout issue in Bangalore, right? I mean, what we should do is inverter, right? And kind of, or what is the alternative? And the and make informed decision, right? I mean, the hyper awareness and the informed decision, and execute faster. I mean, instead of waiting for a perfect situation, it will never come, right? I mean, anything, it will be wrong anyway, but at least you will learn from those mistakes, right? And also the visibility in the shipment. The Suez Canal example, right? And due to the control tower of the shipping or the supplier, we immediately understood that we have 12 containers in this ship, and what can we do, right? I mean, it was in less than an hour.
Wow.
So you arrange another ship, and the turning around to Cape Town, and maybe you will lose another week or two, but you had a backup plan.
Yeah.
We use technology for this kind of thing, especially supply chain visibility. I think the digitalization can play an important role to help the buyers and sellers.
Definitely, that's a great example. Thank you. And Professor Mamoon, I mean, again, what we're hearing there: visibility, sharing data with suppliers so they can plan themselves. It's classic supply chain theory, isn't it? What are your thoughts on how supply chain?
Thank you so much.
That?
Yeah, my two beloved speakers, particularly, they discussed from the industry point of view. So when you come to the academic point of view, basically now, even after the pandemic time, now when we had discussed about in the lecture the supply chain, we are talking about this one modern supply chain, and how we can manage this kind of supply chain disruption. That time already Ojer and Bikash already mentioned, like the technology driven supply chain. So it could be like that, what we said, the automation application, the automation, IoT, machine learning, and if you think about the blockchain, the big data, so all a combination of this on modern supply chain. Our ultimate target is that what you said already, the agile supply chain or resilient supply chain. So the resilient supply chain is our ultimate target by this kind of modern supply chain. When we are going to this kind of modern supply chain, and then you already understand, then online business will be enhanced. So online mode of business pattern will be there. So traditional our order will be reduced, and the people will go to the more cashless transaction, financial transaction. So earlier they used the credit card directly hand to hand. Now they like to do the all kind of transactions online base. So it's all of the part of the flow of information will be the digitalized modern supply chain. Flow of money will be the digitalized, and it will be that no physical interaction, but it's enhance the supply chain. But at the same time, if you look very carefully, this kind of transformation, I would say the digital transformation, we have to check also there's a impact upon the society. Particularly, we have to deal with the human resource. We have to deal with the people, how they're accepting this kind of digital transformation. So it would be the better that we have to go to the digital transformation gradually, so that we can create that the acceptance level among all stakeholders, particularly the customers level. Some of the customers, they are not aware about this kind of digital transformation, so it couldn't get the benefit to them directly. So ultimately, we have to go to the digital transformation. And definitely we have to go to the agile resilient supply chain. But before that, we have to need some of the practice, discussion, sharing the experience, sharing the case studies based on the industry, so that all industries, those are not using, they have to get the awareness about this one. What is happening in the Tesco, what is happening in the Walmart. So similarly, Super Shop in the other country, they have to do the same practice. That is the way that how we can go to the next level of digital transformation of supply chain.
Thank you. And I think actually, we were talking about examples and so on. I think, Oza, your example was very powerful there for all the talk of all the vendors of IoT and all this amazing tracking and traceability, to be able to say specifically, we could immediately tell 12 containers would have been disrupted by the Suez Canal and we could immediately act. That's worth more than 1,000 words of the vendors kind of puffing around. So that's it. But back to Professor Mamun's comment as well. I think it's the non-digital aspect that's also important, i.e., the people and culture, which leads nicely to our final agenda point, which is using disruption to drive a more modern supply chain. And I think what you said, Vikas, almost think your very first point of that disruption, allowing empowerment of employees, allowing things to happen which it sounds like would not have normally happened. So I guess in terms of disruption driving the modern supply chain, welcome your comments about how it can be turned to advantage to make change happen.
I think I'll have to repeat myself what I said in the beginning. I think what's most important is people. It's very critical for your business. So develop your talent, and that's very important. Focus on supply chain risk management. I think in the article they said as well that a big percentage of people talk about it, but they don't. And as Walt Disney famously said, it's the work only begins when you quit talking and begin doing. Right? And that's what everybody has to do. Supply chain digitalization, as I keep saying, you have to invest more on information. Analytics help make more informed decisions. Logistics disruptions going to be there. It's going through a cycle of ups and downs. It always has, and it always has carried risks. And we somehow managed it, but we have to have a better handle on that. And then we talked about supplier diversification. One of the key to that is also not only finding more people who can do it, but also get into innovation. Look at your products and see how do you make your product more simple? Can you use common materials across so that you reduce the risk of having to purchase too many things from too many different people. And of course, sustainability. It is a survival for all businesses to be more sustainable. I think we need to adopt more green practices, use less water, recycle more, reduce your carbon footprint.
Yeah, no, absolutely. When we talk about the modern supply chain, very much, sustainable and green is
this could be the next biggest risk, which could stop your operations or even risk your business.
Yeah. Oza, what are your thoughts on advice on how disruption can drive change, drive the modern supply chain?
Yeah, digitalization, blockchain, these are very powerful tools, right? I mean, also fitting with the changing demographics, right? I keep telling this, maybe I am one of the last generation had to go to library to make us a homework, right? And now everything is in the speed of light to reach the information, right? What do you do with this information in the end, right? But the decisions will be still made by our primitive brain. That means that we only make business with the people we trust, right? And so collaboration is the key, right? And the digitalization will not take out the human factor from the equation, right? And in the end, we need to collaborate. We have to collaborate to solve many issues, complex challenges we have in our ever complicated environment, right? The sustainability is a big issue. We need to collaborate to find a solution. It will not something, okay, this is my requirement, supplier, and they comply with this, then I will buy from you. This will not work. I mean, this is, and also okay, I will not work with you and the guy in the Far East. I will bring everything nearby, but you should still collaborate, right? And because the thing is that resources are not equally distributed over the nations, right? I mean, somebody has this mineral, someone has other mineral. You should cooperate. I think the collaboration will be increasingly important, right? And the companies should find. The question is which company you should collaborate with, right? I mean, partnering, and based on your corporate objectives, of course, and strategic imperatives. And I think this will be the way forward. But unfortunately, what we observe, right, in the new generations getting less and less interest in supply chain, and this is another scarcity we are going to have.
Yeah. Okay. That's interesting. So again, that people side, whether it's relationships with suppliers and collaborating, whether it's your own people and indeed shortage of talent, which we've discussed in previous episodes. Professor Mamoun, your thoughts on this?
Yes. Thank you. I'd like to start from my colleague, the Ojer. He already mentioned that young generation, they're not feeling too much interest about the supply chain management area. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And that's why we are organizing such kind of supply chain talk to get the awareness among the young generation, to get the feedback from you industry people, because so that they can understand there is a lots of employability, the lots of opportunity in the supply chain management area, logistic area. That's why you have to continue this kind of seminars, this kind of webinar, so that they can get the attention for their supply chain area. First of all, I like to study this way. We have to ensure the flow of information in the whole supply chain from the supplier to customer. And in that case, definitely you have to go to the what kind of automation, what kind of technology you can apply. We have to do that one so that you can ensure the supply chain visibility among all stakeholders. So it is a very crucial for our successful supply chain management, that how we could ensure the supply chain visibility among all stakeholders. And secondly, we have to ensure that networking among all stakeholders. Already my other speakers, they mentioned about this one. We are a little bit weak in this area. We couldn't create this kind of environment, that networking and collaboration among all stakeholders. And we have to think about the competitive advantage rather than competition, and how we can add the values to the whole supply chain. And definitely we have to go to what you said earlier, sustainability. Ultimate target is sustainable supply chain management. So that should be the green supply chain management, environment friendly supply chain management, because ultimate target is that how we can contribute to the society by producing that green supply chain management. And in that case, again, come to that point that reduce the wastage materials. So we have to go to the cashless transaction. We have to reduce the physical interaction rather than the online interaction will be the better for us. And definitely technology will be the one kind of solution to reduce that wastage materials. So that how we can go to the next level of supply chain management, digitalized supply chain management, modern supply chain management based on the green supply chain. So it is the ultimate target, how we have to ensure that environment friendly supply chain management.
Great, thank you. So, and I would say, interesting point about the lack of interest from the younger generation in supply chain. I'm not sure if I'm quite so pessimistic. Well, while my own children haven't gone into supply chain, maybe because I steered them clear of it, I do know quite a few of their friends, their generation in their 20s, who are in supply chain careers. So there are young people going into it, I have to say. Good. Well, I see that we are actually kind of reaching the end of our time. So some great discussions, lots of really interesting points, a lot of common issues that we all agreed on as well, which is great. In terms of the contribution, Jose Cordoba, I really liked your question. That was very helpful. I saw you had a few other ones which we couldn't get to. So a Supply Chain Talk mug will be heading its way to you. Our next episode is next Wednesday, the 14th of June at 4 p.m. BST. And it's a slightly related subject called Red Flags in Your Supply Chain, Identifying and Mitigating Risks. So we'll be talking about that next Wednesday. And finally, thank you again to my guests, Vikas Ray, VP Supply Chain at APZ McCormick and Company, Oza Ergel, Group Head of Procurement, CPO at Aquila Capital, And finally, Professor Dr. Mamoon Habib, professor at the University of Bangladesh and at the University of Texas, and also at the University Tun Abdul Razak, so at many universities. So thank you very much, all three of you, for some great discussion, and thank you, audience, for joining us, and I hope to see you next week. Goodbye.